of the remainder.
Right, okay. And that's, what, 6.7 million, I think?
Yes.
All right, so that's on appeal.
Yes.
All right. So what's the next step? What's the next juncture here? Legal juncture, if you will.
We file our briefs in the appellate division, and we wait for oral argument, and then we wait for a decision. And Bonnie could probably speak to this better than I, but I believe it will be 1.5 to 2 years before the appellate division finishes.
My experience has been that it's really 12 to 14 months you'll get listed for argument. And then once, because there's no schedule in the appellate division, it depends on who's writing the opinion. So you could get an opinion after oral argument in 4 weeks, you could get one in 6 months.
I don't disagree, and what we've thought of in terms of planning is that it could be 1.5 to 2 before it's up, down, and either affirmed or remanded. And in any event, the effect of the stay on Jean's economic well-being will be difficult to calculate until there's a decision. And even if Judge Convery is affirmed, because of the lack of the ability to use the remaining money, we'll have to sort of reconstitute Jean's economics.
Ellen, because it's been a high-profile case, have you found yourself, and again, I guess this goes sometimes with the territory of, again, big-time divorce celebrities and community leaders, have you found yourself to be taking on the role of spokesperson from time to time? I mean, you are tonight, but have there been other instances where you've actually had to speak on behalf of Jean Strahan?
Yes, early on, there was a lot of scrutiny, and Michael had 2 public relations firms, and Jean was interested in retaining one, and none of them actually that we looked to in New York would represent her.
I see.
So that was the first time we learned the power of not being the player. And so there were times that we had to prepare press releases after a day at court. It was very different.
Is this the kind of role that you're really not accustomed to? But if you got a celebrity, you got a star, you got a big community leader, does that force you into a role that you're really, I don't want to say not equipped to handle, but you rarely have to handle it? So now you're not just attorney.
It's certainly not part of our training.
No, right.
It's certainly not part of our
But
training.
it's given to you, is it not? I mean, it comes with the turf.
And sometimes you have to step up to the plate to do that. And then, of course, everything you say or do, you have to weigh it against what are the possible ramifications and how can it be used in court against or for my client. And as I said, I think it's a tough place to be in because we're not trained to do that.
Chris, if I may, we have to be like you for a day, and you know how hard that must be.
Well, and it's a lot of stress, Dave. You really don't want to go there. But I mean, you really do have to end up, and it's not just being in front of a camera, in front of the lights. I mean, really, you are representing this person in something that you could say, possibly, Don, could be deleterious to your client's case.
Yeah, I mean, I much prefer in the cases that I handle to be under the radar and my client be under the radar because Dave pointed it out, on that next echelon down, the successful business person who relies on the goodwill of the community for their business. They really don't want this, and I don't think that the dependent spouse should really want it because they're really killing the goose that lays the golden egg. I mean, if that cash flow goes, it hurts everybody.
Interesting.
But sometimes you see it.
And I really think that judges don't look favorably on the person who's out there trying to utilize the media to gain an advantage or utilize their kids and putting everything out there. I think they'd much rather see someone who acts with dignity and comes into their courtroom than someone who's out there trying to play the press because I think they get offended.
Alan, let me ask you straight up. I mean, after the initial decision to grant your client, I think the initial decision was to grant her the $15.3 million. They said, "What are you going to do now?" And she said, "I'm going to Disney World." Didn't that make you cringe a little bit?
She said that in jest after an interview about where do you go next, and she said, truly, I just want to go raise my daughters in privacy and happily, and I'm happy that it's over. And she was joking with the reporters as they were leaving, and they said, "So what are you really going to do?" And she started to laugh, and she said, "I'm going to go to Disney World."
Right, and of course that's what makes it into the press.
Right. Right. Jean, very much as what Bonnie just said, we wanted this to be way below the radar. I think even prominent people, I don't think the Wentz or the Welches would have wanted their cases, however high profile they wound up being and however much they wound up being reported decisions in the legal and the media sense of the word. I don't think people want that. We didn't. And Jean still wishes that that this didn't happen. She had a yard sale, and the Associated Press covered it. That wasn't what she would have chosen.
Right, and that was another pejorative in the press. You know, Gene Strahan, you know, poor church mouse has got to now sell off artifacts and furniture and clothing.
Gene Strahan and Michael Strahan had a yard sale together the last time they moved. She's from North Dakota. She has yard sales when she moves. It was a good community event. She did it with some neighbors and friends.
I think one of the things, though, that when you just discussed about what the press picks up, I haven't discussed any of the case with Ellen until tonight. But when I, as a woman, as a family lawyer, was reading every day what was going on, the descriptions in the press were how Gene Strahan was dressed. They didn't talk about how Michael was dressed, but she was dressed in beautiful pearls and a black dress, and she looked this and she looked that way. And every day in the newspaper, the media discussed how she appeared. They never talked about how he appeared. So it was an interesting observation of how reporters and how media perceives people, the spouse, in this case, an attractive woman, but she was definitely portrayed in the media as this lovely woman and how she was dressed.
And I think that's the problem, though, when these things are publicized, you can't control how the press is going to report it, like the Disney World comment or the garage sale or whatever. So if someone goes to the press to try to advance their case, and I think Bonnie's right, I don't think judges like that, number one. And number two, you can't control how it's reported. So you may go to the press to try to advance your cause and end up looking foolish.
A little backstory on that, though. Gene walked into the courthouse every day from the front door and went up in the elevator with every other litigant. Michael went up in a special private elevator that he requested and used to walk from the elevator to the courtroom backwards so that the press couldn't see or photograph his face because he doesn't like to be photographed in the morning. Gene said, I'm here, I'm a litigant, I'm like everyone else. I can't control what the press does, but I can control that I walk in with my head held high. I don't need special elevators. I'm like everyone else here to get help.
And again, a great distinguishing factor here is that this is not going to be tried in front of a jury. This is going to be tried, it's going to be heard by, you know, these cases are heard by judges and magistrates. So I guess, David LaDove, we should be thankful for that because, again, so much of these details that we're sharing tonight maybe put stress on the litigants. And ultimately, it probably won't put, you know, too much stress on the judge to make the right decision. But at least it's not a jury that's going to be tainted here.
You know, you are so right. I mean, the only state that I know of, and the panel will correct me if I'm wrong, is Texas still has jury trials in divorce cases, but I don't think anyone else does. And thank God, because this is a perfect example of who knows what would have happened to Gene Strahan or any of the dependent spouses where you have these celebrities. Because these celebrities just gain this almost godlike quality, and everyone only looks at it from their perspective, and they can't do any wrong. So I really think that there's a reason that these cases are tried by judges. If I may just interject one thing, Chris, you had asked us before in terms of our training, and I have to tell you, more and more law firms and or I'm going to say continuing education courses are now about the media and the law. And they're teaching all of us how to be a teeny bit more media savvy. Don was 110% correct. You can't control what gets out. But we're now learning, and all of us are taking these courses because so many more cases are getting out there that we never would have gotten out there before.
All right, moment of truth. Bonnie Frost.
Oh dear.
Is this? You have to have one Jack in the Box moment. It's not that bad. Is this the kind of case you want?
Well, it depends on what side you're on, I think. I think that's probably the answer.
That buys you a little bit more time.
Right, and in many respects it is on several ways from a lawyer's perspective. Number one, you're probably going to get paid. Number two, no matter what side you're on. Number two, you're probably going to get referrals as a result of being part of a high profile. Right. I think the downside is that many times people who are just like Michael Strahan, who are used to having everything done for them, having special treatment, if your practice is not ready to be taken over by this one celebrity, you're going to have problems running the rest of your practice and dealing with the doctor's wife or the doctor or the businessman down the street who's really been your bread and butter for many a year. So I think that could be the downside of it.
Don, what about you?
I agree. I mean, I think that those cases advance issues that you don't see in other cases, sometimes with celebrity goodwill in some states. But, you know, everything else can't really be put on hold, and the problem is people can't put their lives on hold while you litigate one case that's so all-consuming. So I think on balance, I think it's an exciting thing to be involved in, but it's draining. I think it's difficult to run your practice.
Dave, do you ever find that if you've got a high-profile client, you find that not only is it taking up more of your time, but they can be difficult to work with as well, don't they? And again, we're not
difficult's being polite. They're
being polite.
impossible.
Okay.
These are people who are used to controlling everything, and they're used to, as someone said earlier, everyone jumps for them. So these are people who are used to just think about the agents, the press people, the et cetera, you know, the lawyers, all these high-profile people expect you to be available 24/7 and to just give they are your only client. And unless your practice can accommodate that, don't take that case. And I can say I have had the pleasure of doing some of them, and I've also had the pleasure of saying no thank you.
Interesting.
I have, you know, right now as chair of the family law section of the Pennsylvania Bar Association, I had one of these cases come to me in June, and I said to the referring attorney, please don't take this the wrong way. Thanks, but no thanks. And we have to be fair to ourselves and our families, because these are all-consuming cases. I know when Ellen took this case, I did a little help in the background. I would call her late at 7 o'clock, and I'd say go home already. She says, "Are you kidding? I'm going to be here till 10 o'clock at night." And unless you have that time, these are all-consuming.
And it's not just the high-profile case that deals with the celebrity, but it could be a business owner or someone who is bringing a large marital estate to the table. Are they more naturally skeptical that they figure this battle is going to run its course when the money runs out? In other words, the more money, the more litigation. Don't you have more scrutiny as an attorney because there may be more skepticism with the wealthier client?
Absolutely. In the cases that I've been dealing with recently, the clients who are, I'm going to say, more sophisticated, they're looking at the bills more. They're wondering, they don't want to say it to you. They say about the other attorney, gosh, why is he milking this so badly? And it's not necessarily milking. There's so many issues. The client says, well, why can't we just have one four-way meeting and resolve everything? What's such a big deal? And, you're sitting there saying, well, because there's 4 different categories of issues: kid issues, support issues, property issues, and divorce issues. And each thing has different compartments. And it's not, if you're doing a good job, you can't make those decisions in 5 minutes or less. These have long-range terms. And I don't want the client to come back next week and say to me, well, did you really think about that tax consequence? And my response is, well, you rushed me through the meeting, so I guess I didn't have a chance to. I better call my malpractice carrier. I'm not doing that.
Right. Alec Baldwin obviously said things that caused a stir in the press, but what are the legal implications? We'll take care of that when we return. Here's what's coming up over the next 3 weeks on the show, and then a few thank yous for making tonight's programming possible.
Tonight's Law Journal has been made possible in part by King, Spry, Herman, Freund, and Fall, a comprehensive practice serving its clients in family law, business, personal injury, and school law matters for over 30 years, with 4 offices in Allentown, Bethlehem, Bangor, and Stroudsburg. Cozen O'Connor, a full-service, client-oriented law firm among the 100 largest in the United States, serving both business and private clients, headquartered in Philadelphia with over 20 offices throughout the U.S. and in London. Einhorn, Harris, Asher, Barbarito, Frost, and Ironson. For over 40 years, building its reputation serving individuals, commercial and private business clients in personal injury, zoning, estate planning, criminal law, and one of the largest family law practices in the state of New Jersey, with offices in Denville. And The Legal Intelligencer, the nation's oldest legal publication and daily newspaper for lawyers.
Divorce, celebrity style, including custody and support matters. What happens when a divorce attorney represents a celebrity, the well-heeled, the wealthy, etc.? Cases are tried in the press. And what is the impact? How do divorce attorneys handle that? We're discussing big-time divorce tonight and its impact in the legal community. Don Spry joining us once again with King Spry, Herman, Freund, and Fall. 30-plus years in practice for Don. He's been joining us here on the show for about 15 years. Bonnie Frost hails from Einhorn Harris in New Jersey. Bonnie, the immediate past chair of the New Jersey State Bar Association's Family Law Section. David LaDove joining us tonight. He assumed that position last year and is the current chair in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Bar Association's chair of the Family Law Section. And Ellen Marshall joins us tonight. She's been practicing since 1989, correct, Ellen?
Correct.
1989 in the state of New Jersey. In fact, we realized tonight, Ellen and I practiced for a short while at the same firm in New Jersey. We overlapped by a few months. Ellen also has been representing Gene Strahan in the Michael Strahan, Gene Strahan divorce matter. Again, folks, if you need more information, go to our website, lawjournaltv.com. Every program we put up on the web later goes up as a webcast. You can watch any program that we broadcast here over the last 12 months. If you need the name of an attorney, if you want to find out what's coming up next, call us toll free, 888-78-LAW-TV. Write to us at info@lawjournaltv.com and get your law on demand. Alec Baldwin, I don't know what we can say that hasn't already been said, except no one, David LaDove, has really done much of the legal analysis here, have they? They've talked about the seedy underbelly. We're really not talking about the legal implications here.
Sadly, no. You know.
So let's.
You know, from my perspective and the little homework that I've done on the case, it's unfortunately a typical lousy custody battle. And I say lousy because mom has prevented dad from seeing the kid or has done everything in her power to interrupt his visitations or interrupt his time. And when you have long-distance relationships or long-distance situations like this one is, it makes it even more difficult. I heard recently that one of the reasons Alec got so upset about not having his daughter pick up on the phone was that it was like the 10th or 11th day that he had been trying to call her, and he had a court order that provided a very specific time to call his daughter and speak to her. What I also found out was this was after a 10 or 11 day time period that he had his daughter with him for 10 or 11 days. He now went back to mom, and this was sort of like tit for tat. I didn't see my daughter for 11 days. Now you're going to see how it feels. Well, the reason he got so much time was because this was makeup time for him. And we're missing all that background. All we're hearing is